On Thanksgiving Day of 2012 in Little Falls, Minnesota, 64-year-old Byron David Smith fatally shot two teenagers that broke into his home. The teens were cousins, Nicholas Brady and Haley Kiefer. Brady knew Smith because Smith had hired Brady previously to do some work on his property. Smith stopped hiring local teenagers after his home had been burglarized at least 6 times in the last year. He suspected the two teens of possibly being involved. Several $1,000s in cash, a chainsaw and other tools, as well as his deceased father's Rolex, had been among the stolen items. In total, the burglars had made off with about $50,000 worth of goods. According to his neighbors, Smith became disillusioned in the police after they had failed to respond quickly to the one burglary he had reported. So Smith began installing cameras and he began carrying a gun inside of his home. Smith was well liked by his neighbors and said to be a very private but kind person that kept to himself. On the day of the killings, Smith had been socializing with neighbors when he saw Nicholas's cousin, Haley, driving around the area. Instead of driving back to his house, Smith left his vehicle down the street and walked home. Once Smith got home, he armed himself and situated himself in a chair in his basement and began recording a chilling monologue that prosecutors would later use to paint him not as a scared homeowner, but as a calculating predator lying in wait. Here's an excerpt of the audio that was captured.
In your left eye. Bruce, stop by tomorrow morning. No rush, but as soon as convenient. Can you do that? Yeah. Park to the north. 100 yards north of the corner, and walk in from the west. I realize I don't have an appointment, but I would like to see one of the lawyers here. You're dead. sorry about that. You're dying. Itch. Of course, I'm safe. Cute. I'm sure she thought she was a real pro. I feel a little bit safer. Not totally safe. I'm still shaking a bit. I refuse to live in fear. I felt like I was cleaning up a mess. Worse than spilled food. Worse than vomit. Worse than shit. This bitch was going to go through her life spoiling things for other people. Thieving, robbing, drug use. I try to be a good person. I try to do what I should, be friendly to other people. Try to be a good citizen. And because I try to be a decent person, they think I'm a pansy. I'm a sucker. They think I'm there for them to take advantage of. Is that the reward for being a good person?
I have to ask, Byron, after the shooting and it's done, why didn't you call law enforcement to report what happened?
For the first couple hours, I was just shaking. And I gradually shifted into worrying about another accomplice. There'd already been two.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew that both the brass-plated bitch and her husband were both watching.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I knew, the whole family was in on it. Bill and I thought the whole family was in on it. And I was pretty much afraid to do anything. An hour later, I had this screwball thought that seems sort of irrational now, but just because my Thanksgiving's screwed up, I don't need to screw up yours.
So, Byron, she had fell to the ground. You shot once with the Mini 14.
Yeah.
She came tumbling down the steps. Now she's at the bottom of the steps.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have, you didn't notice, well, she basically didn't have anything in her hands per se as far as anything
I wasn't
goes.
looking at her hands.
Okay.
I wasn't looking at any of the details.
But she's laying there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously you had hit her, so she's hurt, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know how well I'd hit her.
Right.
I mean, she was still laying there looking at me. She could have gotten up again for all I know.
Okay. My question, Byron, is why did you shoot again? She didn't have a weapon in her hand. She wasn't.
Actually, I don't know if she had a weapon in her hand until
Okay.
later.
Okay.
I wasn't looking at her hands.
But she was laying there, hurt. Did she? She wasn't threatening you. I'm just. I have to
thought
ask.
she was threatening me.
Okay. Explain that to me.
I assumed she had a gun.
Okay.
Either inside something or in the purse or in her hand or whatever. And I'm not going to wait for her to. I'm not going to ask her if she has a gun.
Right. Understandable. Okay.
I'm not going to wait until she shows it or if she uses it while I'm looking for it.
Okay.
I had already determined that both of them, I knew they were both gun thieves. As far as I was concerned, they were totally dangerous.
Okay. All right. What happened after that, after the gun jammed?
After the gun jammed, well, he fell with his head under the table. She fell immediately at the bottom of the steps. So you'll see two different patches of blood on the floor.
Okay.
And when the gun clicked, misfired, she laughed at me. And
when she was laughing at you, she was at the bottom of the steps on the floor?
It wasn't a very long laugh because she was already hurting. But, there was this Merca. And, okay, there's another red button I guess most people would have. If you're trying to shoot somebody and they laugh at you, you go again.
So when she laughed at you, how did that make you feel? Did that infuriate you or make you upset or?
I knew that the gun had misfired previously. I take care. I was ready. And I just pulled it out, and yes, I fired more shots than I needed to.
Did you leave the residence at all from when the incident happened up into my arrival at your home?
No.
Okay.
That was the first time I unlocked the door.
Okay, so you were home the entire time?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I was afraid to go upstairs because I thought there might be somebody with a gun looking in the windows.
Byron, what clothes were you wearing when this happened? When you had shot these two that broke into your home?
After it got dark, in the late evening, I snuck upstairs to my bedroom, got these pants, and took off the brown pants, same model Wranglers, and rolled them up and stuffed them in the back corner behind the shelf that holds the stereo equipment.
The thing I find really interesting about Byron Smith is that he seems to be a cross between someone who is very regimented and into following rules and societal codes of conduct, whilst also being something of a vigilante. For example, before the shootings, he took it upon himself to inform his neighbors that the spruce trees in the area were infected with a fungus. There was a family that lived near him with a teenage daughter. Even though Smith was not fond of them and believed they were terrible people, he still felt it was his duty to notify them about the spruce tree infection because, quote, getting rid of an infection in the neighborhood is a good thing, end quote.
So is Ashley Williams a neighbor of yours? Your guys'?
My closest neighbor.
Okay. So she lives, right next door?
At the end of my rather large yard.
Okay. Okay.
So, yes, they are my closest neighbor.
Okay. Do you know Ashley's parents at all?
I have tried very hard to avoid them.
Okay.
They're nasty people.
Okay. You've never gotten along with them?
I have avoided not getting along with them.
Okay.
They have misused and abused too many other people I know for me to have anything to do with them. I limit myself to being polite.
Okay.
If I see them by the mailbox, I'll say good morning. I've never intentionally talked with them about anything, except last year. The spruce in the neighborhood have a fungus disease. And I went to the door and gave them a Xerox copy of how to identify it and how to treat it, just because getting rid of an infection in the neighborhood's a good thing. There was no social interaction. They took the paper and shut the door.
In the end, there were a number of things that did Smith in. First off, the fact that he did not phone for help after the killings was considered highly suspicious, and he never told them that he had managed to record audio of the entire event. The police only realized this after they found the tape recorder on one of Smith's bookshelves. He also never mentioned that he saw Haley Kiefer driving around prior to the incident and that was the reason why he left his vehicle parked down the street. He never told him that he told his neighbor he needed to leave so that he could prepare for her. He claimed that he had been relaxing in his basement with a paperback when the break-in occurred. We know that he was not relaxing with a paperback because in the audio we can clearly hear him talking to himself. In 2014, after deliberating for only 3 hours, a jury found Byron Smith guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite his conviction, in the court of public opinion, a lot of folks consider Smith's case to be a good example of what could happen when someone is repeatedly victimized. Betty Broderick is a tragic character. In a way, I think she was a victim of her upbringing. The idea of being the perfect mother and wife was hammered into Betty. She was raised to believe that you grow up, you meet the perfect man, you get married, have babies, and live happily ever after. But when those roles were taken from her, she had nothing left and was unable to move on. Her whole belief system was shattered.
He took this and said, your family is not going to be protected. And he smashed that family apart.
On November 5th, 1989, Betty Broderick entered the home of her estranged ex-husband Dan and his 28-year-old wife Linda and shot the couple as they lay in bed. Dan had been having an affair with Linda, his legal assistant, for years before he finally divorced Betty to marry Linda.
As pretty as Linda is, her looks are not her best quality. She has the most wonderful, pleasant, sweet disposition of any woman I've ever known.
Normally, people don't empathize with someone who would enter a home and shoot a couple in their bed, but so many women related to Betty's plight.
Did you ask him if he was having an affair?
Yes.
And he said?
Totally denied it and said I was imagining things and I was crazy and that Linda was a sweet, innocent young girl and there was absolutely nothing going on. Never was. And oh, and by the way, your fat, old, boring, ugly, and stupid just started coming on the scene then.
So it's about that period of time. And what she's seeing is from Dan not telling her, well, I'm not interested in you or I'm going to be moving on. He started making the comments that she was boring, that she was getting old, how she looked.
But you married with all of, and I often say this on the show that, there are no cleavers, but you married and for a while certainly did appear to have the Beaver Cleaver family and Beaver
Exactly.
Cleaver. Yes.
Exactly, that's true. I thought we did have a perfect marriage. I knew Dan and I had very similar upbringings with Catholic education all the way through. Mm-hmm. We were both from large Catholic families. Neither sets of our parents have divorced. And we had a lot in common. When we met, we were very happy together. And we had a lot in common. We had common goals. I wanted a large Catholic family, and he wanted to be very successful. And we hit it off, and we were very happy. And I took those marriage vows, and I believe he did at the time too, believing that we'd be together and we'd work together and we'd get through everything and we'd build a life for ourselves. Being a supermom was the only thing I ever wanted to be in life. I did not feel any urge to go out in the world and be successful in business or anything. We had very strict gender lines in our marriage. Dan went out and slayed the dragons and provided for us, and I was home and hearth and children and support my husband emotionally and through the good times and the bad.
And you enjoyed that?
I loved it. It's all I've ever wanted to do.
Betty's frustration and rage led her to leave Dan and Linda several disparaging voicemails.
What's this? We can't come to the phone. You're not supposed to come to the phone at the house. You're supposed to at the house, answer the phone at the office.
I wrote her a letter and I said, look, if you don't stop harassing me, I'm going to withhold $200 for every obscene word you use, $500 every time you come into my house, and $1,000 every time you take the kids away without telling me in advance.
But every time you did something that he did not like, he would deduct $100. This is what I've read, and I think I also saw this on the 2020 report, that every time you do something that he didn't like, he would deduct $100 or $200 or $500, depending upon what he considered the offense to be. Is that true? And he was paying you $9,000 a month. He was.
Sometimes he did, and sometimes it deteriorated until in November '86, my monthly check said that I owed him $1,300 because he had fined me so much that month that I owed him money. What was going through my mind the morning of that house is the whole world fell in, and it was a combination of every single injustice and indignity and horror that I had experienced as the victim of Dan and Linda Kolkina since 1983. It was totally unnecessary for them to have abused me and my children as much as they did. We did nothing in life to deserve to be treated so badly.
I certainly believe in this case that Dan probably truly felt that Betty would kill herself. She'd be so depressed that she would kill herself. I don't think they ever imagined in a million years. They didn't have their security system working, even though he would tell everyone how dangerous Betty was. I don't think they ever imagined at any time that that Betty would fall apart in something, they would be involved in something that happened and it would end.
If you've seen the act on Hulu, then you probably already know all about the sad case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Gypsy Rose Blanchard's mother, Dee Dee, tried to brainwash her daughter into believing she had an assortment of medical conditions that she didn't actually have, including muscular dystrophy, sleep apnea, epilepsy, leukemia, and asthma. Gypsy's teeth began to rot and fall out as a result of the seizure medication that she was taking, a medication that she didn't actually need. Dee Dee had a serious case of Munchausen by proxy, a mental disorder in which a primary caretaker either fakes the child's illness or actually tries to make the child sick, usually for the purpose of getting attention and sympathy or financial gain. And they got plenty of both. Free trips to Walt Disney World, backstage passes to meet Miranda Lambert, and Habitat for Humanity built them a wheelchair-accessible home. Dee Dee made Gypsy use a wheelchair, shaved her head, and did not allow her to attend school, have a normal social life, or visit with family, including her own father. She also tried to convince Gypsy that she was 4 years younger than she actually was. If you've ever seen videos or interviews of Gypsy, then you probably remember her distinct, childlike voice.
It just proves that happy endings are not just in fairy tales, they're real and true in real life also.
Gypsy began using online dating sites as an outlet for her loneliness. In 2012, she connected with Nicholas Godejohn, and the two began a virtual romance in which they discussed eloping and running away together. But Nicholas was not without his own issues. Before meeting Gypsy, he had been arrested for exposing himself inside a fast food restaurant. Gypsy confided in Nicholas about the abuse she was suffering, and the two devised a plan to murder Dee Dee and stage Gypsy's escape as a kidnapping. In June of 2015, after Dee Dee had gone into her bedroom to go to sleep for the night, Gypsy let Nicholas in. Gypsy then hid in a bathroom and covered her ears while Nicholas murdered her mother in the other room. He stabbed Dee Dee 17 times. After fleeing together, they were eventually caught and tried separately. Gypsy was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Nicholas received life in prison. After the facts of the case came to light, there was a lot of support for Gypsy. The public realized that Gypsy was a lifelong victim of abuse. Her father, Rod Blanchard, created a petition to free her, and by May of 2019, the petition had already reached 150,000 signatures.